The last couple of days, it seems like the World Cup fever has really, kicked in. But building up to this World Cup, there's been suggestions in the media amongst football fans that, maybe the World Cup in the middle of the club season has sort of watered down the World Cup fever. We used to get about 6 weeks before the start of the World Cup where all we talk about is the World Cup. Teams are in camp, we're getting tidbits from these training tours, players who are injured, players who are being called up. But this time around, it's just 1 week. How have you seen the peculiar World Cup that we're having this time around at the end of the year as against what we usually have in the summer?
Yeah, like you rightly used, peculiar, although I have in some fora described it as an abnormal World Cup. I'm not trying to toe the line of the Western media who have been overly critical of the host nation, but I think everything about this World Cup, is the first World Cup in Middle East. It's the last World Cup that we have 32 nations. It's the first World Cup during the course of a calendar, of a football calendar season. So there is a lot of abnormalities with this. But football will always have its way. And after all these complaints here and there, by the time the games start tomorrow, everyone will forget all these differences. And just like you noted, you could see people complaining during the course of the season that, 2 weeks to the World Cup, no vibe, nothing. But now that European football stopped last Sunday, we could feel a little more fever. A lot of teams that are going to play next week were engaged in international friendlies. Even countries that are not at the World Cup, like Nigeria, like Egypt, like Chile, like Jordan, these teams got into the fray. So everyone, for once, got their minds off European football and the intrigues of league football, now concentrated on national team football, and I expect that to go even more when the competitions eventually get started on Sunday.
All right, so you were mentioning a couple of things that are unusual, or maybe I should use that word, with this World Cup. Last World Cup with 32 teams, World Cup that comes in the middle of the season and stuff like that. You were at the last World Cup, and Russia, leading up to the Russia World Cup, there was a little bit of some political undertone, right, with the coverage of the host nation. Maybe I should get your first-hand take. Whilst you were in Russia, was politics a big part of the tournament? Were these conversations being had during the World Cup? And I ask this because even more so, leading up to Qatar 2022, it's been a whole lot of politics again.
I must say categorically that nothing of such came up during the competition. That's why I said earlier, football will always have its way. Football has more powers than people in this side of the world even imagine. Fortunately, our government has taken football as a CSR for the people. But what football, the power football wields in the globe, is much more beyond what we can think of. I could read something from my boss at acsports.com. He said, a player missed the penalty kick in 1990, a Yugoslavia, a USSR player, and the guy sort of blames himself that if he had scored that penalty, maybe that breaking up of USSR would not have happened, because Germany won that World Cup, and shortly afterwards, East Germany and West Germany came back together as one. That's the kind of force that football had. We've heard so many stuff about Russia, but I was in Russia from start to finish, and all I saw all over was love. They said they are racist, this and that, but I felt love everywhere. Once they see that, this is a foreigner in our country, football brings the best of people out of them. And that's what I'm expecting in Qatar. All these issues, from the Russian war with Ukraine, from the ban of beer, the conservative lifestyle, everything will take a back seat when the first football is kicked tomorrow.
All right, so that first football is going to be between host nation Qatar and Ecuador at the stadium in Doha. Quickly, I know that you cover a lot of African football. We have 5 representatives. Unfortunately, again, Nigeria won't be part of that contingent. Many have tipped African champion Senegal to be Africa's best hope in this World Cup. But now, unfortunately, we've confirmed in the last 48 to 72 hours that their talisman, Sadio Mane, would be unavailable for the World Cup. Are you still hoping that Senegal would be Nigeria's, I said Nigeria, Africa's arrowhead, I beg your pardon, in this World Cup? Or are you looking at some of the other sides, maybe Morocco, some have said?
Yeah, I must admit, Wale, it is a very good question because, it seems you, like me, are factoring the Sadio Mane aspect. Yes, I was also one of those that felt Senegal have the brightest chance when you consider the talents they have spread across Europe and, of course, the group they are in, because it's also always a big factor. But when you lose Sadio Mane, it's a different ballgame entirely. Yes, they still have some of the talents, but Ismail Assar will not carry that burden. They will have other players, with Bamba Dieng or Famadou Diédé come into the party. It's a different ballgame. And something tells me not to write off Qatar, because in the World Cup, the host nation somehow says 1998. They've always found a way to wriggle their way out of the group, and maybe apart from South Africa in 2010. So I still think South Africa, Senegal, still have that little bit of opportunity, because for all African countries, their groups are not easy at all. Ghana, we have to contend with the likes of Portugal. I still think Uruguay will beat them in their last group game. For Cameroon, they have Brazil, they have Switzerland. For Morocco, they have the likes of Belgium, Croatia. And for Tunisia, they have France and Denmark, who are always the favorites in the group. So it still has to be Senegal, but how well they are able to cope against the Netherlands on Monday will go a long way in ascertaining whether they'll be able to come out of that group. I think if Mane was there, 100% they will not lose to the Netherlands. So how they are going to be able to do that? Because African teams, to an extent, always hold their own against European nations. And forget that annihilation that Portugal gave us at the World Cup. Majority of African victories, apart from 1990, when Cameroon beat Argentina and Colombia, all our victories since then have always been against European nations. So if Qatar are able to avoid a defeat against Netherlands on Monday, Senegal, then they will still be our best team at the competition.
All right, Senegal still Africa's best hope at this World Cup. One final question before I let Fisayo go this morning. I would have loved, if we did have this World Cup review up until 12. But on a broader scale, beyond Africa, a lot of people have tipped Brazil. There's Argentina with Lionel Messi. They're on a 36-game unbeaten run, defending Copa America champions. There's Portugal with almost the same squad that won the Euros, won the Nations League. They still have Cristiano Ronaldo and even a lot more quality. There's a lot of other teams, defending champions France, even though they'll be plagued with some injuries. Who's your odds-on favorite to be crowned champions on the 18th of December at the Lusail Stadium in Qatar?
I also join those that have mentioned Brazil and Argentina. It's a World Cup not in Europe, and we tend to see the best of South American countries there. So I think this should be within one of them. But what Portugal did on Thursday against Nigeria scared me a bit. It's not about the scoreline, but they played like a competition team. If you remember, they didn't go gung-ho against Nigeria. Francis only had one or two saves to make. They didn't come attacking. They were compact all through, attacked on the break. That's what a competition team can do. So I expect one or two competitions from European nations, certainly not France. France have always been bad tournaments. They've always put up a bad defense of their titles. So I think the most they will get to is the quarterfinal in Qatar. But Brazil, Argentina under Lionel Scaloni are coming into the conversation because Scaloni seemed to have molded them into a competition team. Why? He pays a lot of attention to the defense. He was a right back in his days. So in his backroom staff, he has Roberto Ayala, a legendary defender. He has Walter Samuel, a legendary defender. So 3 out of the 5 coaches for Argentina are defenders. And that shows they've only considered 2 goals in the last 9 matches. So in that way, you expect them to go a little more in this competition. And of course, Brazil are always Brazil. Though with their suspects on the attack and attacking front, their best attackers play the same position. Wingers on the left, the wingers on the right. So they get to use maybe Richarlison as a centre forward, but they will still always have a say as to who gets to win the World Cup. So Brazil, Argentina, perhaps Portugal, I think England or Belgium, but I'm not so sold on those two. It seems they have picked at the wrong moment, so the way for them is just down.